We worked last week into the flexion direction. That's bringing the knees into the chest. And today we're going to work with a different hip movement. We're going to work with, we're going to work with mostly rotation. But before we get into the rotation, what we want to do is ensure that the muscles that connect the front of the spine onto the thigh and all of the soft tissue around the pelvis, that has let go as much as possible. Now, we've already started that process with doing the butterfly technique. For a lot of people, this really helps to release the hip flexors and the mighty psoas, as it's known. So that really strong, tough muscle that connects the front of the spine all the way down to the top of the thigh bone there, that one muscle that connects really the, the top and the bottom of the body. So what we're going to do is we're going to come onto our pubic bone on the pillow. So we're going to put the pubic bone on the pillow. Okay, so we're in this position here. Now from here, what we're going to be doing is what we want to do is we want to lengthen out the whole of the front here. So last time we did it lying on our backs and with the butterfly technique. And then in the middle of the week, I sent you this exercise lying in the bath, and then I sent the guided meditation for that. So we're actually going to be building on that one. So one of the things that we're really looking to do here is to lengthen out the tissues on the front of the body. We're going to do that by bending the knees, all right? But the pillow out for a minute, because I want you to be able to see. Very often, if you can keep your awareness there on that part of my body. So that's my hip bone in there, all right? Now, a lot of people, as soon as they go to bend the knee, they get that lift there. But can you see how what's happening is I'm actually taking the front of my hip away from the surface. Demonstrate that again. And my bottom's lifted in the air, all right? Another way that you can see this happening is, sorry for me to turn my back to you, all right? I'm going to come in there, and this is what you'll see. So I've exaggerated there. Yeah. So what happens is as you bend the knee, the whole of the front of the hip comes away and the pelvis rotates on that side. Now, some people, when I'm doing like a classic physiotherapy assessment, they'll start bending, they'll start twisting as soon as I go to bend the knee. All right, so that tells me a lot about how they use their body. And for that reason, we don't want to progress into this too quickly. So what we're going to do is, I only have one pillow here, so I'm not going to use that one under my tummy. And the reason for using one under your tummy is because it kind of decreases the exercise, all right? If you can go into a little bit of a sort of a bottom tucked under position first of all, it can be really helpful, rather than immediately you're lying down and you kind of have a little bit of a sense that your bottom is lifted, all right? It may be necessary to actually put something underneath here so that you can come into a little bit of that posterior pelvic rotation there. See, I'm going to rest my legs up on the pillow there, like that, and then reach out with my hands, and as I come down at this point, what I'm going to do is posteriorly rotate the pelvis, so you can see how that's translated into flexion of the spine all the way through the spine, the lower thoracic and the lumbar, and then plant my pubic bone down on the mat so that I've hopefully got the spine nice and long here. The hip bones are in touch with the floor, and then you just rest the hands wherever they're comfortable. I'm going to get down a little bit. So the key is always, as you come forwards there, to make sure that you tuck your tailbone under, you reach out for the floor with the pubic bone, and then you want to position your arms wherever you can so that you are comfortable, all right? And then rest your head down. Now, although it's very low in terms of the support that I have under the front of my shins, you might be surprised that for many of you, this is going to be sufficient, all right? We don't want you to feel any muscle stretch here. We're not talking about the muscles going all the way down the front of the leg. We're talking about the muscles that connect the spine to the leg. So they're in the trunk. So this is very different to doing this kind of exercise, you know, where we do this in yoga, all right? We're nowhere near that. When we do that kind of a movement, we're very much getting into the superficial muscles, and we'll really feel a stretch on them. This is very, very different, and it's very much in the way that we were working last week, a lot more, if you like, somatic. So if you feel, once you're in position here, that you can't, you know, that you're not sure that anything is happening, then for sure take it a little bit deeper. Now, I can come into this position and bend my knees up to about 75 degrees there. Unsurprisingly, I can just let them really go, and the weight of the foot travels down the shin and into the knee, so it doesn't take any activity there whatsoever. There's no effort. It's surprising how balanced you can actually get there. But this is where a few years or use a coffee table in front of the settee, something like that. Then always the same, so I'm on my elbows and knees. Posteriorly rotate the pelvis, ground with the pubic bone there, and there we go. All right, so resting in position here. And just let the pelvis very gently rock from side to side. Very, very gently. Let your awareness come into the pelvis there. I'm only propping up on elbows just while I'm talking. When you feel that you've used that rocking there to let everything go, then come into stillness and take your attention into the hip joints, ball and socket hip joints. Just notice the quality of left compared to right. Now, if at any point you feel that you want to come out of the position in order to get some props to deepen it, then that's absolutely fine. If you've gone too deep into the pose, then you'll start to feel that you haven't got the ability to move in both directions, and you always want to keep that ability. So in which case, decrease the degree to which your knees are bent. But if you feel any tightness coming into the low back area, the back of the sacrum, the low back area, then again, reduce the knee bend on there. And always, even when you're just lying, every now and again, it may well be that what's happened is you've gone into a little bit of a default anterior pelvic tilt, where you go into a little bit of a sticking the bottom out. So you want to come up onto elbows and knees, really plant the pubic bone there again, and then go back down. So when I say plant the pubic bone, you're tucking the tailbone under. That's creating a little bit of flexion in the low lumbar spine, posteriorly rotating the pelvis. And then when I do that, to make sure that the muscles all loosen up again, I like to just do this little bottom wiggle. I don't know if you've ever looked after little ones and they're really distressed, and you may be trying to get them off to sleep, and you might place them on their tummy, and then you put your hand on their bottom and just wobble it side to side. There's a very, early movement reflex, I'll call it. It's very relaxing. And come into stillness. So taking your awareness back into the hip sockets. And see whether you can start to get a sense of space arriving in that joint. What would it take in order for there to be more space in that joint? And then what we're going to do is introduce some very small movements into the hip joint, really tiny. And I'm going to invite you to imagine these movements before you actually perform them. And its rotation, I'm going to demonstrate, but you can obviously have a look at me, but I want you to still try and imagine this movement. What you're going to do is you're going to imagine that you're taking the foot to the outside. That's rotating the thigh bone inwards, and then letting the foot fall across the midline to the other side. That's externally rotating. But if you can do that in your mind's eye, first of all, and really start to wake up all the small rotators around the hip before performing the movement. If we bring the movement into our mind's eye, first of all, and we have a very clear sense of the direction in which we are going, then what this will do is light up the appropriate muscles. And if we were to do a brain scan, what we would see is those connections actually lighting up in the brain. It's the same if we were even sitting in our armchair and we were to watch some downhill skiing. You might, if you've ever done it or even watched golf or racing cars or whatever, I know particularly with downhill skiing, I remember, you know, I could feel this kind of almost slaloming action going on in my body. And we know that just watching sport will activate the same parts of our brain related to the, excuse me, the movements that are being performed in exactly the same way as the sportsmen and women who are actually doing the movement. And this visualization technique is really important. And then moving into the actual movement itself. Now, I literally want a quarter of an inch in either direction. You're going to go from one direction to the other. So taking the foot away from one side and then towards the other side. Now, when you come from complete stillness, I find that it's almost as if I'm not really sure where I'm going to go. It's if my body doesn't really know that movement. It's so small. It will be happy to do a really big growth movement, but it's not, it has to find its way with these really small movements. And what we're doing when we're finding our way is actually we are bringing new life to the very small muscles, in this case, the hip rotators. And then very gradually, you can, as you build confidence, you can start to move a little bit more into the desired direction. Now, actually, I'm going to release the other foot away because it's in the way and just stopping. And we very much want to keep this movement localized within the hip joint. And if your leg is anything like mine, I can actually feel a little bit of a kind of, you know, thing happening. It's not the smoothest movement in the world. And that's because my muscles are really still finding their way with this. Build up now so that you're going the full expanse without changing the position of the knee in relation to the other knee. Okay, good. Very good. Okay, now from here, we're going to let the leg, the foot, fall down to the outside. And give the foot a little wiggle there. And really bring your awareness into where you can feel that in your body. This is internal rotation of the hip. And then release that leg away. I'm taking mine to the outside of the support there so that the hip comes into a relatively neutral position, and compare left and right. Then bring yourselves back up into your starting position. Once again, come up onto elbows and knees. Posteriorly rotate the pelvis, really ground the pubic bone there. And then I'm going to let my right leg away this time and then bring your awareness into the left hip joint. And this time on the left side, in your mind's eye, see that rotation happening. Where you're almost using the foot as a pendulum. Maybe 4 or 5 times in each direction in your mind's eye. And then when you're ready, not too soon, let that imagined movement translate into actual movement, starting off with 1/4 of an inch excursion on either side. And then gradually building that movement. Very much keeping the weight of the leg on the floor. The leg feels very heavy, and the only activity we're asking it to do here is to roll one way and then the other way with the movement of the foot. Keeping that movement as localized as we can to the hip joint. Couple more. Then let the other leg come up if it isn't already, and let the feet fall apart from each other, and give the ankles a little wiggle there. Feel how the internal rotation of the hips here is really widening out across the whole of the back of the pelvis. And then bring the feet up to the midline and let them cross over the other way. And as we do so, just let the knees slide apart from each other a little bit and see how that feels. So we're introducing a little bit of, we have external rotation of the hips, and we also have a movement known as abduction, where we're taking the legs apart from each other. And then just play around with a swing of the legs there so that this feels really comfortable. And then also you might want to try kind of almost intuitively, I came back up into that pelvic rock where I'm just rocking from side to side. And just letting that shimmy come all the way through the lower pelvis and the lumbar spine there. Making sure that the buttock muscles stay very relaxed here. Now, if like me, you have props in the way, I'm just going to invite you to come up slowly to remove the props. So mindfully, of course, I'm going to work up through my hands here just let my legs come over to one side.